Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Kuf Beis Amud Aleph at the very top. The final Mishnah in the Perek. Says the Mishnah, Hazorek, one who throws an object on Shabbos, not realizing that it is Shabbos. Now I'm going to read you the Mishnah the way the Gemara initially understands the Mishnah in order to avoid confusion. And he realizes while it's in mid-air that it is Shabbos. Kolta acher, whether somebody else anticipates it and catches it, kolta kelev, or a dog catches it, or that it becomes burnt before it lands. All of these cases would be potter. After all, the pasuk says im nefesh achas techto in regards to the korban shoygeg, a korban chatas in regards to somebody doing an iser b'shoygeg. So it says in the pasuk, ba'asoisa achas me mitzvos Hashem, and therefore Chazal learn out it has to be that a person does the entire thing achas me mitzvos Hashem b'shoygeg in order to be chayev korban chatos. And here he didn't do the entire act b'shoygeg, so he's potter. The Mishnah goes on to say another case, zorak la'asois chabura, a person threw an object, let's say a stone, a piece of wood, thinking that it is a weekday, it's not Shabbos, and he does so trying to then inflict a chabura, a wound on somebody or on an animal. And that's a malacha d'oraisa of, let's say, netilas neshama. So this person, after he throws it, it says over here, he remains, becomes aware that it is Shabbos while it is in mid-air before it does his hand and makes a wound on that person or that animal. Potter, again, he is potter. The Mishnah brings a general principle. Zeh haklal. Kol chayvei chatois ein an chayovin ashetei tchilosan v'soifin shkaga. Anybody who does an action that's going to be chayev chatos must have the beginning and the end b'shoygeg, and therefore tchilosan shkaga v'soifin zodoin. If the beginning is shoygeg and the end is bismezid, or vice versa, tchilosan zodom v'soifin shkaga, then he's going to be peturin. Until both the beginning and the end is b'shogeg. And here the Mishnah seems to repeat itself. The Gemara will have to explain the Chiddush. Says the Gemara, asking the following question on its understanding of the Mishnah. Now the Mishnah was understood as follows. Again, a person throws an object on Shabbos b'shogeg, thinking that it is a weekday. In mid-air, he realized that it is Shabbos. The Mishnah goes on to say that if a person, let's say a dog, were to then catch it before it lands, he's going to be potter. Ask the Gemara with the following diuk: Ha nocha chayiv. But if it would land, then it would be chayiv. Ask the Gemara v'halo nizkar. But behold, he realized that it was Shabbos in mid-air, and the Mishnah says v'tnan kol chayiv chatois einan chayovin ashitei tchilason v'soifan shkoda. And our Mishnah says the principle is that a person will only be chayiv chatos if both the beginning and the end is b'shogeg. Yet over here, the diuk is that the beginning is b'shogeg, but the end is b'mezid. Answers the Gemara Amar Rav Kahana, Seifa ason lalachta umisna. The Seifa, this principle that the Mishnah enumerates, is speaking about a case where he throws an object, which is a piece of wood, that is tied to a rope. A donkey would typically have this for carrying purposes, and this piece of wood would be attached to a rope, and he threw that wood b'shoygeg, not knowing that it was Shabbos. Then in mid-air, while he's holding on to the rope, he realized that it indeed is Shabbos. So then we're talking about a situation where, because he's holding on to the rope, and therefore he could have pulled it back, but he didn't. So therefore, if it landed, it's going to be b'mezid, and that's why he's going to be potter. But if indeed it was a regular scenario where he threw a rock b'shoygeg, even if he did realized that it's Shabbos in midair, but since he couldn't pull back the rock, therefore, when the rock falls, he's going to be chayiv, because indeed, the tchila was b'shogeg and the soif was b'shogeg. Ask the Gemara, lichto umisna agoigdo b'yodayhu, even if he did not remember in midair that it is Shabbos, but nonetheless, he would never be chayiv, even if from the beginning he thought it was a weekday and he threw it b'shoigeg, and the entire flight he thought it was a weekday, still he wouldn't be chayiv because he's holding on to the rope, whereby there wasn't a case of him throwing an object, Daled Amos in the Rishus HaRabim, because he's holding on to that rope. Says the Gemara, you're right, in regards to the malacha of hoitzah, we can't say that he's throwing a piece of wood and holding on to a rope. Rather, we must be talking about the other scenario in the Mishnah, Kigon Niskavin Lasis Chabura, where he intends to then make a Chabura. That means he wants to inflict a Chabura on somebody, so he throws this piece of wood holding on to the rope. When he throws it, he thinks that it's a weekday, and therefore it's not a malach of Shabbos. However, in mid-air, he realizes it's Shabbos, and realizes that there's a malacha, therefore, of Netilas Neshama. So that's the scenario that we're talking about. There, indeed, he would have been chayiv. So therefore, since he doesn't pull back the object in midair when he knows that it is Shabbos, so therefore, when it does indeed inflict this chabura on somebody or the animal, then he's going to be indeed, he's going to be potter because he realized that it is mezid, that is Shabbos. However, in contrast, if he would throw a rock, like the Duke of the Reisha is saying, and therefore that rock left his hands b'shogeg, so then when it lands, even if he realizes in midair that it's Shabbos, he's going to be held accountable and chayiv a korban chatos. Ask the Gemara, if this is the scenario of the principle that the Mishnah is enumerating, a case of chabura, right? Hanami tanina, but we already taught that in the Mishnah itself teaches this case. Hazorek lasis chabura bein ba'odam bein behemo v'nizkar ad shelo nasis chabur potter. When he takes the object and he throws it, this case of a wood, and it's attached to a piece of rope, so that's exactly what the Mishnah itself is talking about. So then how can you then say that the principle that the Mishnah enumerates afterwards is the same case? Obviously it's coming to add something, so that can't be the scenario. Elo marove b'ma'avir. Rava says rather he must be talking about the principle referring to where a person, he is ma'avir, he carries the object to Amos, let's say in the Shus HaRabim, b'shogeg, not knowing that it's Shabbos, and then he realized that it is Shabbos, so that's the case that we're talking about. And there, when he realizes Shabbos and wants another 2 amos, he's going to be potter. However, in the Reisha of the Mishnah, if he throws the object, and the object he throws is b'shogeg, thinking that it's a weekday, so therefore he will be chayiv when the object lands on the ground. Ask the Gemara, v'ho zeh klal diktoni azvikektoni. That klal that a Mishnah is enumerating, this general principle, is talking about throwing. And therefore, if we want to make a parallel to the case of Ma'avir, where he is just like in case of Ma'avir, where he carries 2 amos, and then he realizes Shabbos and he decides to carry another 2 amos, and that's the scenario parallel to that would be a case where he's throwing, let's say, this piece of wood, holding on to the chevel, the rope, right? And he has the ability to then hold back when he realizes it's Shabbos, but he doesn't do so. That's the parallel case. Why teach that case? Why not teach that the Mishnah is referring to the general principle as the classical case, where he just throws the rock, he throws an object that is not something that he can go ahead and pull back, but once it's in flight, he can't reverse. Elo Omar Rova Tartik Tani. Rova acquiesces, and he says that you have to learn the Mishnah differently. That the Mishnah is talking about 2 different scenarios, as follows: Hazorek v'nizkar me'achesh hayatzah miyodo. If a person throws an object, and then while he throws it, he thinks that it is the weekday, it's therefore b'shoigeg. In mid-air, he realizes it's Shabbos. In that scenario, he says, when it falls, he will be chayiv. Then the Mishnah goes on to say, when he falls, it will be potter. That's the first case of the Mishnah. The Mishnah goes on to say a separate case. Inami lo nizkar v'kolta acher or kolta kelev or shenisrfa potter. Or if he threw it b'shoigeg, not knowing that it was Shabbos, and he never realized that it was Shabbos during the mid-air, and it fell, but before falling on the ground, it actually was anticipated by either another person or by a kelev, or it was disintegrated by a fire before it landed. So on that, we're saying it's also potter. So God, Rav is saying that if indeed he throws the object, going back to the first of the two cases, where he throws the object b'shoigeg, and he realizes mid-air that it is Shabbos, so when it lands on the ground, he will be potter. Rav Ashi Omar Chisur Mechzer. Rav Ashi argues on Rav and says we can go back to what we thought originally, that is all one case. As follows, the Mishnah is missing an explanation in its words. And this is how you have to learn the Mishnah. Hazarek v'nizkar me'acher sheyotza miyodoi kolta acher kolta kelev shenisrfa potter. If a person throws an object b'shoigeg, and then he realizes mid-air that it is Shabbos, and then it is caught, anticipated by either a person, or it's caught by a kelev, a dog, or by a fire, then it is potter. Ha nocha chayiv. But if it lands, he will be chayiv. If it would land on the ground, he'd be chayiv. Says the Mishnah in continuation, Bamed devarim amurim. This is what was missing in the words. Bamed devarim shechazar v'shochach. That he then realized after in midair that it was Shabbos. He then forgot again that it was Shabbos, and then it landed. If not, if it just was a scenario that he threw up a shoigeg and then he realized it was Shabbos and it landed, he would be potter. It's only if he realized he forgot again that it was Shabbos and then it landed would he be chayiv. Says the Gemara, and it continues on the Mishnah, Shekol chayavin chatos einen chayavin, because in order to be chayiv a korban chatas, the Mishnah says, he's not going to be chayiv achetei tchilosim v'soifen shkoga, until the beginning and the end is b'shoigeg. So it comes out over here that there's a chiddush, couple chidushim. One chiddush is that when he throws it b'shoigeg and he realizes mid-air that it is Shabbos, so when it lands, he's going to be potter, unless he realizes that, or he forgets rather, that it's Shabbos again, and then it lands and he's going to be chayiv. And the chiddush in that case is that even though he had a yediyah in the middle on flight that it was indeed Shabbos, we don't say that yediyah is mechalik, and therefore he's still going to be chayiv when he forgot that it was Shabbos again. Says the Gemara, quoting now the klal of the Mishnah one more time. Ze klal kol chayave chatos. The principle is that all who are going to be chayav chatos is that in the beginning and at the end there is b'shoigeg. Itmar, the Gemara now brings the following statement: Shtei amois b'shoigeg, shtei amois b'mezid, shtei amois b'shoigeg. The following scenario: there is two amos in regards to havara of meleches hoitzah. On Shabbos, there's two amos b'shoigeg, then the subsequent two amos is b'mezid, and then two more amos 5 and 6 is again b'shoigeg. Rabba Omar Potter, Rava Omar Chayev. There's a machloek, so it seems to be a machloek between Rabba and Rava, whether you're Potter or Chayev. Rabba Omar Potter, Rabba says that he is Potter. Afilu Rabbi Gamliel, the Omar Ein Yedil Lachatzi Shir. Even according to Rabbi Gamliel. Now, Rabbi Gamliel says, which we'll learn Be'ezah Hashem in the coming parak, that when it comes to, let's say, Maleches Ksiva, which requires 2 oisiyos to be chayiv for Ksiva on Shabbos, if a person writes 1 ois, b'shoigeg, not knowing that it is Shabbos, then he becomes aware that it is Shabbos, and then he writes and then he forgets that it's Shabbos and he writes another ois. According to Rabbi Gamliel, that yediyah in between the chatzi shiurim is not mechalik, and therefore he would be chayiv a korban chatas for writing two oisios on Shabbos. So here, Rabba says that he is potter, even according to Rabbi Gamliel, who normally would say that the yediyah is not mechalik. Over here, we would say it is mechalik, as follows. I feel Rabbi Gamliel the Omar en yediyah lachatzi shiur hasam over the case over there, like the case of the writing. Hu deki kom gomar shiura b'shogeg kagomar. When he wrote the second ois, the second half of shiur, he did so b'shogeg. Then Rabbi Gamliel says he will be chayiv. The yediyah did not mechalik, but hacha the b'mezi lo. Over here, the amos of 3 and 4 amos, that was the completion of the shir. And that he did b'mezid, and therefore even Rabbi Gamliel would say over here it would be mechalik, and therefore it would be potter. Ask the Gemara over my, what are we referring to? What's the case that we're talking about? If he threw the object, then shoygeghu. When he threw the object, he threw it not knowing that it was Shabbos. He could not retract that object that he threw. It's now in midair. So therefore, even if he has a yediyah, even has a knowledge that it is Shabbos, so he should be potter when it lands, even according to Rabbi Gamliel. So therefore, why are you maintaining that indeed over here that he would be potter, he would be chayiv, because there was a shkoga in the beginning and a shkoga at the end. The Gemara says ele b'ma'avir. You're right. If there was a case of zrika, then indeed he would be chayiv a korban chatas. It would be considered to be a shoygeg b'tchila and a shoygeg b'soif, since he could not retract the object that he threw. But over here, we're talking about a case of Mavir, where he does have the ability to retract. He walks 2 amos, and then, after the 2 amos, he becomes aware of the Shabbos. He didn't have to walk another 2 amos. When he walks another 2 amos, b'mezid, so therefore it completes the shir. So therefore, even Rabbi Gamliel would agree over here, in the case of Mavir, that indeed he would be potter. Rava Omar Chayev. Here you have to read Rava. Rava says that indeed he would be chayav. Va'afil Rabbanon the Amra yesh yediyah lechatzi shir. Even the Rabban who argue Rabbi Gamliel and say when he writes the second ois, that yediyah in between is mechalik, and therefore he's not going to be chayiv, because the yediyah that he knew that it was Shabbos now separates the 2 chatzi shir. Hasam, it's only over there who the biyodoi aval hacha de'en biyodoloi. That's only over there because it was in his ability to either write or not write that second ois. And therefore the Rabbanan say that the yediyah is mechalik. But over here, when it's not biyadoi, he cannot retract. Therefore, even the Rabbanan would say that the yediyah indeed is going to not be mechalik. And therefore, he would be chayiv. Ask the Gemara of Amai, what are we talking about? Ibn Ma'avir hare biyado. If he's walking, then it is biyada. He can decide not to go ahead and walk another 2 amos. And therefore, the fact that he does decide to do so, it's biyado. And therefore the Rabbanan would agree that in fact, that since it's biyado, just like the case of writing a second ois, therefore the yediyah is mechalik, and he should be potter. Ella, we're talking about bizorik, where it's not biyada. Once it leaves his hand, he cannot retract, and therefore Rava says that even the Rabbanan would say chayiv, because over here the yediyah is going to not mechalik. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabba, the following statement: Zorak v'nocha b'pi hakelev or b'pi hakivshin chayiv. If a person throws an object b'shoygeg, not knowing that it is Shabbos, and he throws the object, and it therefore is anticipated by either another person, rather anticipated by a kelev, by a dog, into the kelev's mouth, or into a fire of a furnace, he's going to be chayiv. Frek the Gemara, wait, v'hanan tnan, kolta acher or kolta hakelev or shenisra potter. This contradicts our Mishnah, because our Mishnah says if a person throws an object b'shoygeg, and it is anticipated by either a person or a kelev, or goes into the fire, he's going to be potter. Answers the Gemara, it's not a contradiction. Hasam, Over there, in our Mishnah that says potter is because when he throws it, he intends that it should go onto the ground. And yet a person or a kelev goes and anticipates it and catches it. That's when he's going to be potter. But that which the statement Rabbah had made, that's talking about where he intends to throw into the kelev's mouth. Then he will be chayiv. And here there's a chiddush that even though the kelev's mouth is not dalet al dalet tfachim, but since he intends to throw it into the kelev's mouth, it has chashivus, and therefore it's considered to be a good hanocha. Says the Gemara, Omar Bibi, Bar Abai Af Anan Nami Tanina. We also taught this in the following Mishnah, this concept of achsheve. You can make the makom that you're throwing to be considered to be important, whereby it has chashivus to make the hanocha. As follows: Yesh oichel achila achas v'chayv alech dal chatos v'oshem echad. There's a case where a person can eat one shear, one kizayis, and he can be chayav 4 korban chatos and 1 korban oshem. As follows: Hatame she'ochel chelev v'hu noisar umin ha'mukdoshim b'yom ha'kippurim. A person who is tame, who eats chelev, improper fat, prohibited fats, v'hu noisar, and meat that is left over the designated time, umin ha'mukdoshim b'yom ha'kippurim. And this tame person eats the chelev, which is he's tame. Chelev, tame is also to eat. Chelev, because it's chelev, noisar, because it's left over, and it's on Yom Kippurim. Those are 4 reasons why he's chayiv a korban chatos. And the fact that it's mukdoshin, it's hektish, he's going to be chayiv a korban oshem me'ilois. Says Rabbi Meir, Oimer, af im haise Shabbos v'oitzio bepiv chayiv. Even if a person will then take this out on Shabbos while it's in his mouth, will be chayiv an additional korban chatos, because on Shabbos he's now carrying dalet amos v'shus harabim while it is in his mouth. Says the Chacham to Rabbi Meir, Amru loy eino min Hashem. This additional korban chatos is not of the same category, and therefore you're bringing additional korban chatos of the malach of hotzah on Shabbos. We're talking about nothing to do with hotzah. So they're arguing in terms of that prat, but they agree with him in the principle that if indeed a person would then go out with this food in his mouth, dalet amos, he would be chayiv a korban chatos. V'amai, asked the Gemara, ha'ein derech hotzah bekach. Behold, this is not a derech of hotzah. If a person just carrying the food in his mouth, dalet amos, that's not a way of hotzah. It's considered to be a shuni. Why it should be chayiv a korban chatos? Elis brings Rabbi kivan de kol mechavein machshavtoi mashavyo le mokom, because he has kavana that he wants to therefore eat it while he's walking. That carrying is considered to be a achsheve. He gives it chashivus, and therefore is considered to be a proper havar that he's going to be chayiv chatas for. Hochanami, so too when he throws the object intending that it should fall in the mouth of the dog, of the kelev. Kiven the kamechavein machshavtoi. So too, when he throws it in the mouth of the kelev, he intends that it lands in the mouth of the kelev. Therefore, it's achsheve. It gives chashivus to the mouth of the kelev to be a mokum, to make a hanacha, even though the mouth of the kelev is smaller than dalet al dalet tfachim. Hadron aloch hazorek.